A parrot routinely visits a man's terrace, and one day it astonishingly articulates 3 words, prompting the man to raise the alarm and call 911, leading to an incredible revelation. Subscribe to The Unusual and stick around until the end for the parrot's secret message. Engrossed in his book, Flynn was on his balcony when an unexpected rustling sound piqued his interest. Shocked, he turned and found a beautiful bird perched on the railings. Adorned with vibrant red and blue feathers, the striking bird quickly captured Flynn's attention. Suddenly, the bird tilted its head and chirped, "Hello! Hello!" revealing itself as a parrot. The surprise morphed into excitement for Flynn as the feathered creature initiated conversation, its unique, raspy voice intriguing him. He welcomed the unexpected guest and wondered aloud where it came from, relishing the thrilling encounter without expecting a reply. He soon named it Chapper when that name kept surfacing in the parrot's chatter. Delighting in this unanticipated companionship, Flynn remained blissfully unaware that this encounter would ultimately lead him to report to the authorities. Just a month prior, Flynn had moved into a spacious 1-bedroom apartment on the upper floors of a downtown Seattle complex. The view was magnificent, offering a sweeping vista of trees, hills, and the bustling cityscape. This environment was well-suited for the creative 29-year-old architect, inspiring and igniting his creativity every day. Each daybreak saw Flynn enjoying his coffee while taking in the picturesque view. However, his single lifestyle often led him to yearn for companionship to share his living space. Flynn's introverted nature kept him confined to his apartment most of the time, except for work outings or grocery runs. The lack of sociability among his neighbors didn't help either. Yet as fate would have it, his life was about to take an unexpected turn when a vibrant visitor disrupted his routine. The parrot, Chapper, proved to be a warm and uplifting presence, perhaps better company than many individuals Flynn had met throughout his life. Its multicolored appeal, jovial behavior, and engaging personality created an incredibly friendly atmosphere. Soon the bright bird became an integral part of Flynn's daily life. The parrot's lively aura infused Flynn's lonely existence with laughter and excitement, replacing his preference for solitude with a newfound enjoyment of interaction. Ever since their first encounter, Flynn often pondered about Chapper's origins. The parrot would frequently flutter from the right side of his apartment and settle itself on his balcony railings. Flynn figured that Chapper's caretaker lived on the same floor, but he wasn't sure which apartment it was. Why did the bird always come to see him? Why did it have the freedom to roam as it pleased? But amidst all these questions, where was its caregiver? So Flynn began researching and discovered that Chapper wasn't your average parrot. It was a Moluccan electus, a species from Indonesia. Considering such an exotic bird was here in Seattle, Flynn noted that the caretaker should exercise more vigilance, especially with Chapper's regular escapades. Yet the parrot persistently found a way to visit him. Did the radiant bird do the same with other neighbors, or was he the chosen one? Although too prideful to admit it, Flynn hoped it was the latter. Chapper had quickly become a cherished part of his daily routine. He eagerly anticipated the bird's company so much that he decided to use his architectural skills to create a makeshift play stand for it, complete with ropes and planks. Concerned for the well-being of his new avian companion, he figured that creating a comfortable space for the bird was the least he could do to keep it safe. Over time, this structure proved beneficial. Chapper found joy in sitting on the play stand, happily chattering away. On days when Flynn had to leave for work and missed their regular meetups, he would leave some snacks for Chapper. Their friendship deepened through this routine, strengthening their bond over time. Flynn would teach it new words and phrases, and he was always curious to hear what it had rehearsed at home. Delighting in the adorable parrot's imitations of him, Flynn marveled at the remarkable intelligence the bird exhibited each time it vocalized. Meanwhile, the red parrot would toss out business-related expressions and phrases often heard on television. Assuming it had picked those up from its caregiver, Flynn's curiosity about this mysterious individual would peak every so often. Everything in their companionship was idyllic until one unfortunate day when Chapper didn't show up. It was a leisurely Sunday morning, and true to tradition, Flynn eagerly awaited his vibrant companion. However, disappointment set in when Chapper didn't appear. Assuming the bird's caregiver might have confined it for the day, Flynn steadied himself. But despite his efforts, his tranquility was somewhat disturbed. For the first time since becoming friends with Chapper, Flynn felt compelled to find its rightful owner. Fueled by commitment and a newfound sense of duty, he left his apartment, prepared to knock on every door in his housing complex to gather information. Just as he was mustering his resolve, he encountered an unexpected sight in the corridor. Chapper was indeed in a cage, much to his suspicion, but instead of being in his apartment, it was being cradled in a woman's hands, softly swaying as she moved toward what he presumed was her place, 3 units down from his. In that moment, realization washed over him like a wave of truth. He had located Chapper's rightful owner. Flynn promptly approached the lady, introducing himself. His hands were clammy from nervousness as he stood awkwardly before her, anxiety creeping in as he awaited her reaction. He had never felt this awkward around anyone before, let alone a woman. This marked a first in his life. This was a new experience, one inadvertently initiated by none other than Chapper. After what seemed like an eternity, the lady greeted him with an inviting smile that took Flynn by surprise. Her voice, melodious as a harp, rang out as she introduced herself as Eleanor. Not long after, an interesting yet brief exchange ensued, covering various subjects before eventually steering toward the crux of the matter. Chapper. Flynn shared everything about his newfound bond with her pet parrot, going so far as to relay minute details, showcasing his affection for the unique bird. Eleanor listened intently, her eyes gleaming with interest and delight. She confessed that she had always wondered where her bird flew off to every day. Often she would return from work to find Chapper's cage empty, or she'd arrive just in time to see the little creature flutter onto her balcony after a day of exploration. Her curiosity piqued when Chapper began using new words each day, including the name Flynn. Now she was finally privy to answers for her ponderings. As their conversation continued, Flynn learned more about Chapper's background. Upon discovering that the bird was a gift from Eleanor's parents, he understood why it was so important to her. She had treasured it dearly since the day she received it. However, over time, Eleanor had also observed that her pet bird lacked any adventurous traits. This pet parrot could comfortably stay in her apartment, even with doors flung open, and yet never yearned for the outdoors. This made it puzzling that it recurrently flew off every day and returned in the evening. Following rewarding conversations, Flynn and Eleanor quickly bonded. She felt comfort and peace of mind, knowing that her cherished parrot was under reliable care during her frequent absences. This was especially reassuring as her job demanded constant travel. As a flight attendant, her work often whisked her away from home for extended periods. Now with Flynn around, she could breathe a sigh of relief. As time passed, Chapper's visits to Flynn's apartment increased, and Eleanor often accompanied her feathery friend during these visits. Chapper happily alternated between these two homes, regardless of who was responsible for caring for it. He enjoys the variety, Eleanor once chuckled, making her balcony a continuous gateway for the small creature. Both adults reveled in Chapper's vibrant energy and looked forward to a future with their tiny companion in their shared lives. Regrettably, an unexpected obstacle soon arose in this harmonious relationship. With their busy work schedules, Flynn and Eleanor barely managed to keep in touch. Their interactions gradually decreased, and eventually they drifted apart. Flynn was aware of the toll that circumstances beyond his control had taken on their bond and decided to accept it. Sadly, his rapport with Chapper remained unchanged. The pair continued to enjoy their balcony visits, and everything seemed normal for some time until an odd incident occurred one day. On that day, Eleanor texted to announce her out-of-town trip for a week for work, implying that Chapper's custody fell to Flynn. As usual, Flynn arranged appropriate amenities to ensure the bird's comfort. He stocked up on bird snacks, fruits, and toys to keep the bird entertained. As expected, the parrot arrived and engaged in casual banter with Flynn. "Chapper wants a cracker," it squawked, followed by a medley of chirps and whistles. Flynn smiled and offered it a treat. Everything was running smoothly until the parrot conveyed something unexpected. "Squawk? Fancy getting out of this one, ha ha!" Flynn had never encountered such a comment before. He managed a faltering laugh, eyes creased in confused amusement. Maybe Chapper had been spending too much time in front of the television. Reflecting on the situation, Flynn resolved to remind Eleanor about regulating the number of TV shows their beloved bird watched. As days passed, Chapper incessantly repeated the same phrase, turning it into an irritating refrain that tested Flynn's patience. Driven to the edge, he attempted to coax the parrot into adopting different words. Luckily, it appeared that Chapper tuned into something else, and the disconcerting repetition ceased. But Flynn's sigh of relief didn't last long. Tranquility was disrupted again in mere moments. Chapper baffled him with another puzzling phrase. "Ha ha! Scram, you dumb bird!" Alarm surged within Flynn. Where was Chapper picking up these unpleasant expressions? Such language seemed out of place for television programming, leaving him to wonder who could have aimed such harsh phrases at the bird. A chilling doubt began to gnaw at him. Could it be that the parrot had wandered to another resident's apartment, one that wasn't as friendly? With each utterance of these phrases, Flynn's worry reached dizzying heights, his mind buzzing with countless possibilities. After a spell, he chastised himself for overanalyzing and endeavored to dismiss the matter. However, the seed of apprehension had been sown, prodding Flynn into high alert. The anxious architect reached out to Eleanor, praying for some advice, consolation, or even an explanation that might account for why her parents might have uttered such harsh words. Regrettably, his calls went straight to voicemail, suggesting she was likely at work. Stress quickly enveloped him. In the wake of Eleanor's absence, Flynn recognized he was left to address the issue on his own. But how could he do it? Without a clear strategy, Flynn slowly let the matter go. His task was made easier when Chapper fluttered off, likely back to its cage on Eleanor's balcony. Flynn welcomed the calm, feeling his previously taut nerves begin to unwind. Heaving a sigh of relief, he told himself he had survived a day of undue worry. Unbeknownst to him, his concerns were justified, for a shocking revelation was on the horizon. The following day, Chapper returned bearing another surprise. "Eleanor present, call!" it tweeted, prancing on its play perch. Unlike yesterday, Flynn narrowed his eyes at the bird, trying to decipher the day's enigma. Could Eleanor be home? He wondered, before reminding himself that she wouldn't be back for a few more days. A few moments spent reflecting led Flynn to conclude that the bird wanted to hear its owner's voice. With this understanding, he reached for his phone and dialed Eleanor's number, only to receive the same recorded message again. Moments later, Eleanor sent a text stating she was tied up with other matters, but would return the call as soon as possible. Having faced the same situation a day earlier, Flynn hesitated, not wanting to place himself under similar stress. However, he was unable to remain nonchalant. There was an unsettling element in Chapper's recent statements. This constant sense of unease haunted him, diverting his attention from everything else. In an attempt to distract himself, he turned back to his work, but his gaze kept shifting back to Chapper, who was continuously repeating, "Eleanor here, call." This feeling of disquiet clouded his thinking, causing his anxiety to intensify like a pot left unattended on the stove. Once again, he glanced at Chapper, hopeful that the bird might offer some insight. However, the tiny bird was peacefully preening its feathers, completely oblivious to the tempest brewing within Flynn's mind. Flynn thought he was losing his grip for actually considering that a chatty bird could provide assistance in such a circumstance. But he had yet to realize that the bird was about to do exactly that. As evening approached, Chapper took off from Flynn's balcony, as was his routine. But this time something unusual happened. An hour later, Chapper returned, a surprising shift in behavior for Flynn. As Chapper settled on his railings, Flynn approached it, confusion evident on his face. He attempted to engage the bird in conversation, but it retorted with the same sentence. Flynn's patience was reaching its limit, and his irritation was apparent. He attempted to return to his assignments but paused when he heard something peculiar in Chapper's remarks. Overwhelmed with agitation, he had overlooked the meaning once. Therefore, raising an eyebrow inquisitively, he moved closer to the bird, keen to decipher the next clue. And that's when he heard it. 3 chilling words that engulfed him in a surreal calm. "Help me, Flynn!" Frozen in place, the eerie words echoed in his mind, plunging him into a whirlpool of bewilderment and fear. He wondered where this message had come from, considering the bird's owner, Eleanor, wasn't home. His worry turned into panic as he frantically redialed Eleanor's number, only to be met with voicemail yet again. Flynn was sure that something was seriously amiss. His concerns soared when a realization dawned on him. Chapper had distinctly used his name in the distress message, and as far as he knew, none of his local acquaintances knew his name or would consider using it so casually. With alarm bells ringing in his mind, Flynn called 911 immediately, insisting that a team be sent to Eleanor's residence for a quick check. As he awaited law enforcement, his thoughts spiraled in a fog of uncertainty, feeling like an eternity. If Eleanor was away on a business trip, her place should be empty. However, Chapper's statements contradicted his assumptions. Nothing about the situation seemed to add up at that moment, but he rationalized it was the official's responsibility to investigate. The minutes dragged on, each one painfully elongated. Finally, 2 officers arrived at the residential building, and with Flynn providing directions and a spare key from the management, they accessed Eleanor's home. What they discovered was a shocking revelation. Eleanor was indeed there, collapsed on her bedroom floor. Her hands were bound with strips of duct tape, and her body was in complete disarray. She lay helpless and strained on the cold tiled flooring. But that wasn't the only unexpected sight. The residence was in a state of chaos, with signs of a violent struggle, primarily in her room. Flynn's eyes widened in astonishment, his awareness dull as he attempted to comprehend the scene before him. Swiftly, the emergency responders rushed Eleanor to the hospital, where they discovered she had minor injuries to her head and body. Eleanor received medical attention for her injuries and dehydration, and was prescribed recovery time in bed for a certain duration. During this interval, police initiated a hurried investigation and were astonished at what it unveiled. According to Eleanor's account, she had a disagreement with Dave, a co-worker, and things escalated rapidly. Anger consumed Dave, and he ended up confining her in the room after a small altercation, fleeing with her phone and some valuables. Flynn was staggered by the news. The pieces began to fall into place. The unreachable phone, the strange messages, and even the bizarre words Chapper had been repeating made sense. "Let's see how you cope with this one. Scoot, you dumb bird." Dave had uttered those frightening words within their home, and Chapper had registered them. The man had maintained the pretense to avoid raising any suspicions, unaware that a bird would ultimately lead to his downfall. However, in a twist of fate, Eleanor's desperate call for help had also reached Flynn through Chapper. It dawned on Flynn just how significant their feathered friend had been throughout this ordeal. With the wrongdoing now exposed, they left the remainder of the matter in the hands of law enforcement. It wasn't long before Dave was apprehended and brought to justice. A few months later, Flynn and Eleanor carried on with their lives without worries. Their ordeal with Dave had significantly strengthened their bond. Eleanor felt an enduring sense of gratitude toward Flynn, who had rescued her from a near-fatal situation. She also felt thankful toward Chapper, the unlikely hero, who had played an instrumental role in her rescue. Flynn and Eleanor's lives had improved due to the courage of a small bird. Every day, whenever they relaxed on their small outdoor spaces belonging to their homes, the very area that signified the beginning of an unexpected change, they were reminded of this fact. What an incredible tale. What would your reaction be if a loved one disclosed a potential crime? Would you respond like Flynn and alert the authorities, or choose a different approach? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.